Yes, welcome to a very prestigious occasion here on the Bladtcast. It is indeed the 30th anniversary for the Chevy Chase Show, and I, for one, am honored to be able to be here, joined by the not the most famous person from Massapequa, but also not the most infamous person from Massapequa, the one and only Mr. Thomas J. Kelly. Hello, sir.
Hello, always an honor to be on a camera with you, my friend.
And joining us for the first time on the Bladtcast, Liam McEnaney, thank you so much for being with us, sir.
What an honor it is to be here celebrating 30 years. And I think the only
I
person
know.
who can be more excited, about 30 years passing will be Danny Masterson.
Oh, you came loaded with that one, didn't you?
No, actually, I just thought of it, believe it or not.
You made me reach up and get my bell. All right, you got a bell for that. Thank you, sir.
And did Liam get a booking for this because Mila and Ashton wrote a letter on his behalf?
Yeah.
Can we get these out of the way now?
Yeah, no. I know them a little bit because their kids used to go to the same preschool as my kids, and I was in a pie eating contest with Ashton Kutcher. Neither of us won. I'm still working on the punchline for that. I'm just stating the facts. Tweet us at Bladtcast, Bladtcast, if you have a punchline suggestion for our joke about a pie eating contest with Ashton Kutcher that neither of us won. Who did? Let us know in the comments on the video or on social media. Tom, it is a joyous occasion to celebrate the milestones of comedy, and we're focused on Chevy Chase himself. And I think the greatest place to start is an interaction you had with Chevy Chase. It's a few years after where we're going to be spending time. Let's say this moment might be a little bit of a downturn, but when you had an interaction with Chevy, it might have been an even bigger one.
Did you write Snow Dogs? Is that what happened?
Oh my God, I am starting to realize with Liam on the show, I should have done a lot more prep for this podcast. I apologize to the audience right now.
He has tremendous respect for Liam, none for me, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
By the way, I just want to point out before I answer any questions, this is the most niche of niche shows. When you talk about maybe there is too much entertainment out there, we're about to do a 1-hour podcast about a show that only lasted 30 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, too much, America. The writers are doomed. People are now going to watch this and go back and watch all 30 hours of the Chevy Chase Show. That's 30 more hours. We're all on strike. I'm not happy about this. But I actually, unlike other people,
or you could watch. Oh, you know what? I almost made a joke, and then I realized what you do for a living in places you work. So I stopped myself for something that I was going to have to edit out. Anyway, Tom, why don't you go back to what you were going to say?
Please, because there's not much work left right now. I'd like to hang on to what little I have. So back to us. A lot of people don't like Chevy Chase. I had one interaction with him and found him to be good-hearted. I did find my interaction deflating, but it wasn't his fault. Okay. I was an NBC page with Christian Bladt back in the 1990s. And what they would tend to do is overbook the audience for a show. Like they would book an audience, what was it, 200, 300, whatever it was. And then suddenly, if Michael Jordan showed up with his 6 kids and his mother-in-law, they would bump 7 people because that's Michael Jordan or whatever the celebrity is, the biggest celebrity you could think of in the 90s. And we had brought the audience from the ground floor up to the 9th floor hallway. And all of a sudden, people were realizing they aren't getting in for the live show. We let too many people into the building. And there was the famous SNL Overlook green room just a few feet away from where the audience was. And now here I am dealing with an angry crowd, telling them they have to leave. And who wanders out but Chevy Chase? And my jaw drops. Okay, this is what the magic of ushering for Saturday Night Live is supposed to be like. I am now actually hanging out with Chevy Chase and all of these people. And Chevy comes out to try to help me do my job and help to take the pain off of these people. He says, I will use my star power to put these flames out. And he says, hey guys, I'm sorry you're not getting in, but maybe we could hang out for a minute. And the crowd is just not having him either. And then he goes, guys,
Not from the star of Spies Like Us.
Now that was a great movie. I'm sadly, I'm going to agree to disagree there. Or yes, exactly from the stars of Spies Like Us. He goes, yeah. Then he says, hey guys, I'll even do a weekend update for you. And me, very earnestly, I say, yeah, you could do some old Nixon jokes. And he just looks at me and goes, Nixon jokes. Very funny, kid. And then walked away. and it was just a very deflating moment for me, for the audience. And listen, if Chevy's out there listening, he did his best to cheer up strangers, and the strangers were just not into it.
It's very reminiscent of a story from the 70s at the old SNL offices, and George Harrison wanders into the writer's room, and there was a piano there, and he sits down and he starts to play, and Al Franken sticks his head out and says, who the hell's playing that Beatle music? And George Harrison just got up and slunk away, and no one got the free concert they would have gotten. He knew exactly what he was doing. You were just trying to jump in and have fun, and Chevy wasn't having it. Yeah, Nixon jokes. Very funny.
It's funny. I see Al Franken's big on the New York stand-up scene again right now. Yeah. And I hope to ask him about that story. Al Franken, without giving anything away, never have I seen a man that I've been more excited to meet and hang out with to be so aloof to spending time with Tom Kelly. It's the right way to, like, you could just tell. You ever just see someone and say, man, that's a man who wants you to know he was a senator. But doesn't necessarily want to talk about SNL time. That's
exactly.
the vibe.
What were we going to say?
Wrong.
Every famous person I've ever talked to has been a treat and a delight, and that's all I can say about that.
So obviously you never got to meet Chris Kattan. In any case, one of the things that
I said celebrity. I said celebrity, not
okay.
not Chris Kattan. Come on.
All right.
Actually, not to dispute Liam, but Chris Kattan is playing the Poconos next month, and that's a dream.
Wow,
playing the Poconos is kind of a dream.
The resort with the heart-shaped tubs.
Dude, the dream of 1957. Like, what is that?
Yeah. Speaking of dreams, I think at differing times, I might go out on a limb and say maybe each of the three of us at some point thought that it would be fun to host a talk show, a late night talk show. And we've all hosted podcasts. Tom did some television while he was at a prestigious Northeastern university. And I think that find the lie, Tom. Everything I said was true. And I think that it's interesting because you have to think back to 1993, and the moment where Chevy Chase gets to do a late night talk show for the Fox network, which I think is something that often gets overlooked, comes about for the simple reason that they wanted Dolly Parton. She said no. Why don't you ask Chevy Chase? So they did. And, I think that there'd been a couple of stinkers for Chevy. And it seemed like, well, I'm funny. I should be able to do this. I'm sure that I believe there was a $3 million a payday attached to this. They also spent $1 million on something that we'll learn was called the Chevy Chase Theater for about 5 weeks. And then it may have reverted to its previous name. And for people who know LA, by the way, what I learned is that theater was what was the Nickelodeon sound stages for a number of years when I first moved to LA. And I believe
the Aquarius Theater.
The Aquarius Theater, yes, sir.
On Hollywood or Sunset?
It's on Sunset.
I think it was on Sunset.
Sunset, not far from the former location of Amoeba Records or the Cinerama Dome, but that concludes our walking tour of old Hollywood.
Actually, may I add just a quick note of trivia that the Chevy Chase Show was so bad not only did they rename the Chevy Chase Theater in Los Angeles, but the Chevy Chase Theater in Chevy Chase, Maryland is now known as the Avalon Theater. I just found that on a quick Google.
That's amazing. I'm surprised that Chevy Chase, Maryland is still called Chevy Chase, Maryland. Actually, that's the most surprising part. And just to put it in context, a little bit more than a year earlier, Johnny Carson retires from the Tonight Show, and Jay Leno takes over. And movies and books have been written about that. And a week before Chevy comes to the airwaves, David Letterman does his first show for CBS, literally a week before. And I didn't want to, I talked about this earlier on who are these broadcasters. I don't want to go out on a limb here, but Letterman's first show and his tenure at CBS might have gone a little bit better. I know it's a controversial take. People aren't necessarily ready to hear the truth, but I feel like it went better. I'm also just remembering, I assume we were all in the New York area in 1993. The push for the Chevy Chase Show on Fox was impressive in a number of ways, because there was so much advertising for it. There were these ads of Chevy like on the side of the bus. He had like a gap tooth like Letterman. I don't know if you guys remember that sort of a thing, but I remember it very well. Do you kind of remember? Let me ask you first, Tom. Do you remember them trying to sort of feign excitement for the Chevy Chase Show, trying to force us to be excited at that point?
See, it's so easy for you to be negative. I saw that ad, ready to fill the late night gap.
Yeah, because he's got a fake gap in his teeth like Letterman, Yeah.
Listen, maybe this is why nobody's hired me as a showbiz executive. But if you can go back to the 1993 mindset, why wouldn't this work? Letterman is proving at the time that there's room for more people to watch a late night show.
Sure.
You had Arsenio Hall doing okay at that point. Jay Leno and Dave were fighting out for an existing chunk of viewers. Why not an extra guy coming in? I mean, people say, "Oh my gosh, is there room for 3 white guys in late night?" I think now we're up to 9. I mean, why not a Chevy Chase Show? And remember, too, Chevy, before Leno became the permanent guest host of the Tonight Show, Chevy was subbing in for Jay.
Yeah.
If I were an executive, I thought this would be an easy home run. Now, remember, Joan Rivers just failed. Maybe Fox was part of the failure.
That was about 4 or 5 years earlier. That was the previous time. Yeah, it was the previous time that Fox tried to have a late night show, was a Joan Rivers show, which also garnered some controversy for Joan, and I believe Johnny Carson never spoke to her again. She had been the permanent guest host for Johnny. What were you going to say, Liam?
And it killed Edgar. That's all I wanted to add.
Well, I'm glad you jumped in with that. Just for the nature of the world we live in, allegedly, right? Right, Liam? Allegedly.
Right. No, I would say he killed himself because of this show.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So Fox, I believe in most markets, this show was on at 11 p.m. Eastern, and the other late night shows started at 11:30 or 11:35 at some point. So you had some time to work with. People could check out Chevy, and there had been a big push. And Tom, I want to let you finish your thought. Go ahead.
No, but just finishing the thought, I thought this was going to be a home run. Remember, the way I lived my life in high school was Arsenio at 11, Johnny's monologue at 11:30, Dave at 12:30. Then it was, if I was feeling crazy, it was Arsenio and Jay, or predominantly Dave, at 12:30, and then Conan at 12:30.
Right.
Why not? The real competition was Arsenio, and I remember being excited about the show before the launch of it.
Well, at some point, we can do a special. We missed the 30th anniversary of the syndicated late night talk show the year before that I was a tremendous fan of, which was the Dennis Miller Show. And that had about, I think, 6 or 7 months on the air in 1992. And so there were a lot of attempts, syndicated and otherwise. Chevy comes on the air a week after Dave, a week before Conan, and Conan was literally unknown at that point. So that seemed like there was room for it. Liam, I wanted to get your thoughts on what you remember about this era. If you have any thoughts about this idea that Chevy Chase was going to host a talk show.
So I'm going to tell you exactly what 17-year-old me thought about this specific ad right here, because it was everywhere. It was in newspapers back when people used to read those. It was on buses. It was in trains. And every time I saw it, I thought the same exact thing, which is it looks like they're trying to say that Chevy Chase will enter David Letterman's mouth. Like literally every time I saw the ad, that's all I could think about was just like, okay, it's because to me, it's like, right. That's a very sexual thing to put another man's mouth
to fill, and filling his late night gap. That is also very sexual. I don't disagree.
Well, I mean, not to defend the Chevy Chase promotional team 30 years later, but I think it's funny because it's like, is he filling the late night vagina? Is the joke? I thought it was a dirty joke at the time.
I think that that's why it's truly funny, because it works on so many levels, Tom.
Here's the thing, Tom. Anyone in the New York City subway system who saw that ad and owned a marker agreed with you, and they would write it all over. But the other thing, the crazy thing is, you're talking about these late night shows, right? You're talking about Joan Rivers' failure, talking about Chevy Chase failing. They all failed because they could never get more than 3 million viewers at a time, right? Yeah. Like Chevy Chase topped out when he premiered at 3 million viewers. Now,
and let me just interject, by the way, they guaranteed advertisers and affiliates that Chevy would bring 5 million viewers a night. And no one, even Carson at that point, wasn't delivering that.
So imagine, right? Like now, if Chevy had 1 million viewers for his show every night, he'd be the king of late night.
Yeah.
Right. Like Fallon's team dreams of 1 million viewers. Yeah. I mean, maybe a video will get 1 million views on YouTube, but never live, never like night of airing.
Right. No, exactly. So I think that it makes sense as a gamble, but I don't know. There's a joke that Chevy will make that we'll focus on in a little bit that probably rings a little bit more than true. Any shows that you've heard of, I've seen a couple of the Late Night with Conan O'Brien test shows. Test shows are really important, and I wonder if they did test shows, because I think that they probably figured they would just test it out on the air. And if they did test shows, that would be breaking news, and that would be shocking, because we've preambled long enough. I want to share with the people what we actually got on that night, when we got to actually watch what was going on, on the Chevy Chase Show. And speak up if you don't see or hear what's about to start.
I don't hear.
I can't hear it.
Neither of you hear it. Okay, that's fair. That's fair enough. This is why. Hey, Liam, remember before we started and we worked on all the possible tech things that could go wrong? Do you remember that part? That's all right.
And you said Tom Kelly has a negative energy that destroys comedy. That's exactly what you said.
I did.
You make jokes, but I am late for this show because I went biking with my nephew, and we got a flat tire about a mile away from here. And I'll tell the story while Christian plays the fill and banter, and you can cut it out.
No, it's okay.
Ready?
Let's see if we can get this to go. And again, speak up if you don't hear it. I'm going to try and play it a different way. Just let me know.
Here.
No?
Yeah, I can hear it.
A little bit warm. I think what.
Okay, so we're going to go back to the beginning. Here we go.
What's the matter, Senor Luigi? You look a little nervous. I'm very nervous. Have you had anything to eat today? No. First night, opening night jitters, huh? Yeah. Well, you really should eat something. Are you feverish? I don't think so. Well, let's check. Let's see here. No. A little bit warm. I think what you need is something to eat. No, I don't want to eat. My stomach is too nervous. I think what you need is a good tongue sandwich.
And the rest, as they say, is history. I remember
The-
that's the thing I remembered about this show was the cold open of the first episode of the Chevy Chase Show, and the hand puppet that vomits, and only a few years later, the Dana Carvey show would premiere with Dana as Bill Clinton opening his shirt and breastfeeding puppies. So. I think that there sometimes can be a case to be made for putting your best foot forward. Go ahead.
The first two gags that open the entire run of the show are an anal thermometer gag, followed immediately by a close up of a vomit gag. That's the tone setter for the rest of the Chevy Chase Show.
Yeah, I think that I can think of which one of those things I would rather be doing than watching the Chevy Chase Show as it goes along. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, I'm going to argue that's basically Anchorman humor there, though. I mean, not to defend Chevy Chase, and I mean, listen, obviously I'm on the wrong side of history. It only lasted 30 shows, but
29. But yes, go ahead.
I guess there wasn't a test show. Okay, but I'm going to stand by this that that's Chevy Chase humor. I mean, maybe we shouldn't have given him a show. Or maybe the expectations were so high. But
yeah,
I mean, I'll argue. I'll go back in time and I'll give you this one. Maybe, and it's easy to say it now. Maybe Chevy Chase is overrated. If you,
okay.
But that's classic Chevy.
I would say I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. Chevy Chase is not funny, and making him the center of comedy is not the right move, because Chevy Chase is maybe the greatest straight man in the history of comedy. So like what he does really well is he stands there and by the way, I'm not like underselling what he does because he's extremely talented comic actor. But it's like you look at the vacation movies, and what Chevy Chase does so well in those movies is like Randy Quaid comes in as Cousin Eddie and does something crazy. And then you watch Chevy just kind of react to that, think about it, do a slow burn, right? Like old lady dies and is put on the roof. You see how he reacts to that. You got a hillbilly that's like, how much money you got in your wallet? You see his reaction to that. And it builds and builds and builds until he's like beating up a plastic moose. And to put Chevy Chase in the position of being the guy who sells the joke and kind of being like the wacky puppet guy, it doesn't work. Like it's just a fundamental misunderstanding of strengths.
Well, I think that the show kind of betrays the fact that what he's not good at is ad-libbing. What he's good at is having written lines that seem like ad-libs. Like in Caddyshack, he's talking to Bill Murray, and he's like, "Yeah, we got a pond and a pool. Pond would be good for you," but that's written by a very talented writer, and it's delivered incredibly well.
Right.
But Chevy didn't come up with that on the set,
But Harold Ramis knows Chevy's not the guy who's going to be like going around muttering about a Cinderella story. He's going to be the guy that like eventually does something very crazy, but in a way that's like completely rooted in his character.
Yeah. I disagree with the idea that he's not funny. However, you're 100% right that he is the straight man. I think that that's very important. But I think that, look, Lorne Michaels doesn't enjoy improvisation. I mean, that's why Damon Wayans was fired from SNL. I mean, there's other stories of that. So he was very good at delivering lines on a cue card, which is not that easy, by the way. Those cue cards are very hard to read on SNL. You could just look at some of the hosts on that show.
Dude, I mean, look at the very first sketch in SNL history is Chevy Chase and Richard Pryor. And it's all Chevy Chase just kind of reacting to the energy that Richard Pryor is throwing at him. So when you get to the point where like Chevy throws out the N-word and Richard Pryor goes dead honky, and then you watch Chevy's character kind of like backtracking mentally, it's the funniest thing. So I'm not saying like Chevy's not like a funny guy. I'm saying he's not like the guy that you want standing at home base selling jokes every night.
Well, if I could build on something both of you have said, I think Liam put into words what I was thinking, which is, he's a straight man. The words I was going to use was Chevy was always the good-looking, swarmy guy, and things were going on around him. And if you think about it too, Chevy was a good-looking man at age 20. in 1976 when SNL came out.
Sure.
We're now at 93. I'm not as hot as I was 15 years ago, and
stop it, Tom. I'd say you're hotter.
Actually, in all fairness, I am, but I'm hotter. I mean, you guys knew me in the 90s and whatnot. Yeah, I'm hotter, but that's just, I didn't start off very high. But for other normal men, I mean, he was a hot frat boy. I was an awkward tech support geek. But Chevy was the hot frat guy. Things happened around him. And then just when you talk about, I guess the thought in my head throughout this is, I don't want to justify the disaster, but you had the other line about delivering punchlines. Remember, this is 1993. Bob Hope is still alive. We're coming off an age where one of the greatest punchlines in NBC history is, I just wanted to show you boys what you're all fighting for. Which really is just sexual harassment now. And I think if you were a network executive with that mindset, Chevy Chase must succeed. Why isn't he drawing 5 million viewers a night?
Right.
I mean, again.
Well, and before we deal with any of the notes that we would get, I'll just make a historical correction. The first episode of Saturday Night Live was with George Carlin, and the first sketch is I would like to feed your fingertips to the Wolverines, and then Chevy comes in and says, live from New York, it's Saturday night.
Right.
And just to your point,
if I were watching this show and somebody didn't correct that, I would be like, who are these guys?
And I'll be honest, I was having trouble believing SNL launched a 50-year career with the N-word. I was really
1975 was a different time.
Yeah,
Richard Pryor did have an album called Super That Word. So
but that was episode 2. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right.
That's episode 2, and that was written by Paul Mooney, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. And Chevy camped out on that for a while. He said that Richard Pryor told him it was okay for him to use that word because of that sketch. True story. Anyway, we're gonna try my prepared clips again. Just speak up if you don't hear it, and if you don't, I have another way to play it, but this is a little bit easier to control. So we, the open of the show is actually fairly well done and looks very professional. So we're going to skip it. And we're going to get to the point where Chevy finally comes out for the first time. Let me know if you're hearing it.
Not hearing, Christian. Just watching.
Okay, this is a very important moment for our audio audience. There's a man at a basketball hoop. He throws Chevy the ball. Chevy misses. Okay.
Insert shot.
So not an awkward cut at all right there, right? Liam, Tom, Chevy actually making the basket and then going back to fumbling around, trying as hard as he can to actually make it. It's the most fitting start to this show is he takes like 2 or 3 shots at that basket. And he doesn't succeed, but they were smart. They cut it. We fixed it in post. By the way, in those days, it was probably very costly to go back and put an insert shot in like that, after the fact. But Liam, I'll ask you first. Is there a more fitting start to this show than, all right, he's in the studio and son of a bitch can't shoot a basket?
Yeah. I think when viewers are watching a show for the first time, they really want to be presented with an unsolvable puzzle. And in this case, the puzzle is, why is there a guy playing basketball in the background of this talk show? And very clearly, by the way, that insert shot was the producers after about 17 or 18 attempts, just going, Chevy, it's okay. We'll cut it in. We'll splice it in. You don't have to worry about it. It'll look like you made the basket the first time.
Yeah, it'll look like it. What do you think seeing that, Tom? Do you wish that you had the physical form of a 57-year-old Chevy Chase? Actually, he couldn't possibly be that old at that point, but late 40s Chevy Chase.
So there's 2 different ways to go, and I think you and Liam put something into perspective. I've learned something from today's podcast, which is I think Chevy Chase was a victim of high expectations. Like 5 million viewers a year, or 5 billion viewers a night. And, God, if they underpromised, I think that's comedy gold. The problem is for the show you've built up where you're guaranteeing 5 million viewers a night, you want everything to hit. I think Conan with a basketball net would have been hilarious because Conan would have made fun of it in the monologue. Whereas Chevy Chase, again, his shtick is hubris. He's not going to own. Look at me, I can't get it. Look at me, I'm fat. Look at me, I'm going bald. He's not going to do brilliant Tom Kelly jokes of I'm hotter than I was at age 20. And I think that's the miss. Now, just historically, to Liam's point, I work in daytime TV. The preponderance of my career has always been live TV, where I always feel like live is the way to go. You get it or you don't. But modern daytime TV, ever since that little up-and-comer Oprah came into the picture, was let's tape ahead of time. Let's overproduce this. And you're right. If that were and what I see there are daytime TV gimmicks. And what I remember of Chevy Chase, and I know we're getting up to it, is I do remember the gimmicks. And I remember these gimmicks popping up again and again and again throughout my career in daytime TV in the 90s and 2000s. And I think one gimmick is, look at me, I'm shooting a basket. Now, remember, just a few years later, 2 years later, Rosie O'Donnell comes on the show, and her gimmick is we're going to launch the show, every show at a cold open, with not Rosie, with not a celebrity, but it was a regular person from Jersey introducing what was on the show.
Forgot about that. That's right. Yeah.
Now, had Rosie failed, the three of us would be doing a podcast on why is that schmuck from Jersey saying Whoopi Goldberg's on the show, And so I don't know. I think it was a shot that missed, literally and figuratively.
It probably would have been Melissa from Moonaki's fault, that she was the one who announced it. But, funny that you mentioned Rosie O'Donnell, because I was going to bring up the fact that show was live, except for the year that it wasn't. And I don't think you worked on the year that they taped all the shows, but a mutual friend of ours told us that the show was just deadly that year, and then the tapings dragged on forever because they were working so hard at trying to get it right because it was taped and they were able to, so they went back to doing it live after 1 year. And I think there's something to be said for, as the great Bill O'Reilly would say, do it live.
I just want to go back to this basketball player for a second.
Sure, yeah.
Magic Johnson was one of the greatest basketball players of all time.
Yeah.
He hosted one of the most infamously terrible late night talk shows of all time. Magic Johnson did not come out his first night and shoot hoops. So why is Chevy Chase doing it?
Well, do you think that he was watching the Chevy Chase show and he's like, oh, God damn it, I was going to do that, and now I can't. Yeah. By the way, I smell sequel to this episode, and that sequel's name is The Magic Hour. But
oh my God,
what are you going to say, Tom?
How many more years till we hit 30 on that one? But you've made some brilliant points there. But here's my point overall: is why did they shoot a basket? Because they were trying to not be Guy coming out of a curtain.
Yeah.
Using your history, you had how many other knockoffs do late night shows where they just came out of a curtain and did the formula? He's like, you know what? I'm going to be the guy who shoots the basket. And I think the mistake was, or my question for you is, what happened? When did they stop shooting the basket, or did they do that for all 29 shows?
No, I think that's the only time, because I have not seen all 29 episodes. I have to apologize for not doing that level of research, but I haven't seen it in any other ones. But to your point, the big bold step in a lot of talk shows would be like, let's not do the curtain anymore. I mentioned Dennis Miller, his syndicated show at one point, he stopped coming out of the curtain. You had hosts who tried, like, I'm not going to wear a suit. First I'm like, I'm not going to wear a tie, and then I'm not going to wear a jacket. Kimmel kind of settled on something like that. But ultimately, you do kind of just go back to a lot of the conventions that work. I mean, I think that Seth Meyers' show found any footing at all because he's like, I'm more comfortable sitting at a desk telling jokes. Let's just do it that way. Not everybody should stand in front of a curtain and tell jokes. I mean, if you think about Conan, when he started, he would do like 3. He really wouldn't do very many jokes at the curtain, and bringing it back to our subject, to Chevy Chase, Chevy also does not actually tell jokes in his opening segment. But this is him. Go ahead, Liam.
He tells what I call jokes.
Yeah, well, there's that. So again, speak up if you don't hear, but this is after the basketball, and he's going to talk to the audience for the first time.
I can't hear it.
Sorry, did you guys say you could or couldn't hear it?
Could not hear it.
No.
Not hear it. See, that's interesting because I remember you guys heard the last one. Remember that?
The first one. We didn't hear the last one. We didn't hear the basketball net either.
Oh, you didn't hear the basketball net either. Okay, I didn't.
But
that one, it didn't matter, did it? You know.
No, and we heard it on the inside. We heard the pain.
Yeah, that's the beauty of that part. That's fine because I'm going to show you the same thing in a different way. Okay, so everybody's excited now. We are going to watch this again. We're not going to stop at the basketball this time, though. We're going to actually just talk through it. We're going to see what a great shot by Chevy. And, he's like, all right, well, that went about as well as it could. There's no way that could have gone better. So, and I love anytime you watch something on YouTube and there's the old VHS like crackle in the middle, the tracking fixing itself. That always personally takes me back. But, you can tell he's still thinking about that basketball that he didn't make, despite the fact of what it looked like on TV. But then Chevy knows that you have to point and move your hands to get your band to stop. We'll talk about the band in a little bit. But here's Chevy.
Thank you very much. Hello. All right, please. Please. Sit down. Hey. If I knew you were going to be this enthusiastic, I would have rehearsed.
And that's the moment I was talking about earlier. Does anyone think he rehearsed before he came out? He's very cavalier about that, but he does strike me as a guy who wouldn't do test shows and wouldn't actually rehearse.
But at least he spent the whole hour talking about how nervous he was and unprepared.
Yeah, and that spoiler that comes up in subsequent monologues when he comes out. He's aware of the feedback. Tom, you messaged me something. Do you want to point it out,
Yes.
or do you want me to say?
Yeah,
it?
I was gonna say it while it played. If you
Yeah.
look at his face through the whole standing ovation, he just has this look of I don't like people. Like people are cheering for him, showing love for him, and he's just he just has this look of irritation that people are clapping for him.
Yeah. And in a much later episode, he does a bit where he goes out in, I think it's episode 26. He goes out in the audience and he lets audience members tell stories. And I didn't pull it, but now I'm wishing I had because he's very uncomfortable being around people in general. But the surprising thing is the one setting where you feel like he'd be comfortable would be standing on a stage, there to entertain people. But I think this is the realization that he's not an actual live performer. There's cue cards with things he can read, but not every word that he says is written out, so it's already, the Fox executives were already like, uh-oh, they're there at the taping. And I don't know, Liam, would you still be thinking about how you didn't make that basket?
I would say the thing about Chevy that's easy to forget is the only thing he's ever really done other than maybe National Lampoon's Lemmings, but professionally on television that had a live audience, was Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And Saturday Night Live is so, if you ever go to a tape, which you've been to a few tapings, Lorne has everything so strictly regimented, and he has since literally day one, that even the audience isn't really encouraged to shout out or say things or interact with the performers. And when they do, it's genuinely notable. Whereas when you're talking one-on-one, when you're a comedian or a host or whatever, and you're talking rhetorically to the audience, they're gonna give it back to you. I think Chevy's not used to that.
No, and in some of the later episodes, the audience definitely smells blood in the water because there is a lot more. He takes a pause to set something up, and then people take that as an occasion where they should be shouting. But let's get back to this intro here on Chevy. I'm sorry, Tom, were you about to jump in with something? Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to add one thing to Liam's point. Is for live television, using SNL as the example and his resume, he had only done it 20, maybe 25 times before this.
Yeah, he did like a season and a half, and by this point he'd hosted a couple of times. So let's round up and say 30, but that's it. You're right. It's not that many times. It's not like he's Dan Aykroyd, who, did 4 seasons and then was like, yeah, I could probably host a talk show. Which, by the way, a Dan Aykroyd talk show where he's, drinking his Crystal Head vodka and talking about aliens. I'd watch that tomorrow, but let's see what Chevy's got.
Can I point one more thing? Go ahead. One more thing about the audience, which is with failure talk shows, people don't come see them. So the PAs are literally pulling audience off Hollywood Boulevard for these tapings. So it's not like maybe the first episode will be an audience of Chevy Chase fans. After that, it's whoever they can get to sit in those seats, and those people can be rowdy.
Yeah, I mean, part of Tom and my background as NBC pages, it didn't happen often because at the time we were there, the shows that it never happened for SNL, but occasionally, a taping time would change. People wouldn't show up for whatever reason, like a group wouldn't show up. You would have to try and wrangle people. Like, do you want to come and see a talk show? And I worked for a judge show in New York that called Curtis Court. Shout out. They shared a crew in a studio with Inside Edition. So they recorded from, I believe it was 7 a.m. to noon. You might be surprised to find out that it was filled with homeless people and people who'd been paid to be there. In some cases, homeless people who'd been paid to be there. So yeah, it can be very difficult. But I think that this night was probably their biggest turnout. And let's watch Chevy banter some more.
Boy, I'm so excited.
He looked down at his penis.
A lot of people wondered why I wanted to do my own TV show, and I confess I'm one of them. But I think the moment I knew I wanted to get back on TV was the day my daughters tied me up and made me watch Oh Heavenly Dog twice. Anyway, after all the fuss and hype last week over that other late-night TV show, I finally got to see it. You know something? It just isn't funny. I didn't laugh once, except at his hair. And that's why I predict right here and now that my show is going to kick Ted Koppel's ass.
Which is a very much a joke of the moment because of the Entertainment Weekly cover story with Arsenio Hall, where he said, I'm going to kick Jay Leno's ass. So it's very much of the moment. And boy, he didn't even come close to dipping into that Nightline audience, though. Old Cornelius, which is Chevy's real name. Old Cornelius did not really eat into any of the audience out there. But I don't know. I've stood on a stage and been uncomfortable talking to the people there before, so I know what it feels like. They're not really jokes, but I guess that's that one's a joke. I'm going to kick Ted Koppel's ass. And I mean, he got nothing. Why do you think, Tom? I'll ask you the same question, Liam. Is it that he undersold it? He didn't have faith in the joke? Was it not funny? Did the people not know who Ted Koppel was? Let's spend the next 40 minutes
analyzing one sentence.
Yeah.
No, but I think what you see there will be a theme that we're going to explore as we break every minute down into 15-minute conversations. I'll go through the shows I've worked at. I've worked at The View. I've worked at Rosie O'Donnell. I have worked at Drew Barrymore for a little bit. I have worked at Rachel Ray for a little bit. And the one thing I've noticed when I've worked at these shows, especially when they're first launching, is the hosts are generally good human beings who are happy to be there. And what you just heard in that one sentence is a lot of what I instinctively felt when watching the show and then looking at clips, which is this is a cash grab. It's a deluded man doing a cash grab. And the second thing that I saw there was I forgot about the Jay Leno line, but even the Ted Koppel punches, this is a man punching down. And no, but like if you look at like you're right. At this point, Jay Leno is squirming. Letterman is just starting. They're new guys. They're new kids taking over for Carson. It was, a squirm. What was Letterman's first joke? Letterman's first joke I remember was a big applause. And then he pauses and says, if you really think about it, all I did was take the summer off. The punchline was, I'm not a big deal. Why are you this excited? Yeah. Chevy's first punchline is, and listen, remember, Chevy's slightly better looking than Jay and Dave at this point, and definitely better looking than Ted Koppel at this point. Here I am, good looking man, punching down on three other guys. It's
to that point,
not likable.
When you would go to a Letterman tape and they would tell you not to give him a standing ovation, it makes him really uncomfortable. Please don't do it. I think his last week they let people do it. His last week at NBC, people did it, and his last week at CBS, I believe they did as well. And I guess they weren't going to stop them. But I think that's a great comparison because there's not entirely, Letterman is a good example because he's not the most likable, warm and fuzzy person, and at the same time, his self-loathing was such that he was like, I can't believe anybody's even watching this show at this point, but I guess we do a good enough job. And Chevy is slumming it. He's like, can you believe that they've got me doing this? I've seen clips of stand-ups who they all go into the same thing and they're like, wow, I can't believe I'm here on this night doing time. My career sure didn't go the way I wanted. It's like, you're saying that to people who just paid to be in that room, the people who are paying your salary for the night. So I don't know. Chevy, I think, was always ill at ease. But I'm sure that he'll warm up to it as he goes through this.
So we have a great show. We have a great show for you tonight. My old friend and co-star is here, Oscar winner Goldie Hawn.
Can I just point something out?
Weird. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just point something out really quickly?
Sure, go ahead.
This is the second time this show has made a big deal about the fact that both his guests have Oscars.
Yeah.
And I get it's the big prize in Hollywood, but I think even in '93, when showbiz wasn't so fragmented, that was not that big a deal to have two Oscar-winning guests on your talk show. It's just your late night talk show with celebrities. Of course they're gonna.
This is long enough ago where Whoopi was not even an EGOT yet. Now, I think that's impressive. Because there's only a couple other ones. And so I think that's much more impressive. What I was alluding to, though, is that, I really hope that interview with Goldie Hawn doesn't get awkward at any point. I hope it's at no time is it difficult to watch or at all cringy.
Also, another Oscar winner and good friend, Whoopi Goldberg.
Does Chevy have good friends? I don't know.
Plus, a man who won a special Oscar for basketball, Sam Archer.
I'm so glad that's going on.
But first, say hello to Tom Scott and the NBC Orchestra.
As the show goes along, the house band changes its name to the Hollywood Express. Now, you heard him just say the name of the band. Why do you think that they might change the name of the band? Any ideas, Liam? Tom? Tom's raising his hand. Yeah, go ahead.
Wrong network.
Yeah, well, it's actually the MBC Orchestra. However, it sounds an awful lot like the NBC Orchestra. And maybe it's a joke. Maybe it is the NBC Orchestra. And Paul Schaefer changed his band name from World's Most Dangerous Band to the CBS Orchestra because there were a lot of. I didn't even think they used the term intellectual property back then, but there were a lot of claims that Letterman wouldn't be able to do the top 10, which of course he did. But yeah, and the band. Is I don't know. The band's a part of any talk show, I guess. But do you think, Liam, that calling it the MBC Orchestra is a smart idea for a primetime show on the Fox network?
No, it's extremely confusing. Honestly, I heard it as the NBC Orchestra.
Right.
And I just assumed Chevy had made a mistake because he makes a few of them through the course of this episode.
Oh yeah, I guess you might be right that there might have been a more than one mistake as he went along. We talked in our open about how the theater was rechristened the Chevy Chase Theater. And I do remember them, there was at least some degree of coverage about that. And, they made a little bit of a fuss about it. I mean, I didn't live in LA at the time, but I kind of remember. I remember there being some buzz about the Chevy Chase show. So I think a perfect way to really get things going with your brand new late night talk show is to have a prepared package, a video that had been taped earlier. Now, people who are from the LA area, you might be excited to see honorary mayor of Hollywood, Johnny Grant, who has since passed away. But this is not, I don't know. Well, let's just let it play.
Thank you, Chevy. And now Chevy will christen his new home with champagne. Not in a bottle, but in a water balloon. Chevy will fire the champagne at theater using a slingshot made of surgical rubber tubing. And with the authority vested in me as the honorary mayor of Hollywood, I hereby declare that when the champagne balloon hits this edifice, it will be officially named the Chevy Chase Theater.
Where do you want me to stand?
Even in this clip, he sounds annoyed. He hates everyone there.
How far back? Are we ready?
I don't know if it's the video quality, but I have no idea if it actually hits the theater. And I mean, it's a stiff, uninteresting bit. There are no jokes at no point. The jokes are supposed to be, well, we're going to put champagne in a water balloon. Chevy's like a big kid. He's going to use a slingshot. This is not prime time, but this is late night network television. Now, remember, this is 1993. No, there weren't only, 5 channels, but there were less than 40. We all had the cable boxes at some point, probably, where you had the row of like 12 buttons and you had to click it 1, 2, or 3, depending on how many, but you couldn't really get more than 36 channels at a certain point. And there had to be something better on, something even mildly more interesting than this, including the local news, which apparently is what most people watched instead. What do you think about the christening of the theater, Liam? Let me ask you first, and then Tom, I'll let you jump in.
Well, his contempt for his audience is just seething. Like, he hates this. I think the thing you have to remember is when you're making a movie like Fletch, or you're making a movie like Spies Like Us, or any of the other great movies that Chevy's made, the audience is not
Cops
there
and Robertsons. Sorry,
Cops and Robertsons. The audience is not there on set with you. You don't have to deal with the crowd. Like, they're in the theater 6 to 8 months later, where you don't have to be. Yeah. This is the first time I think Chevy has had to have extended contact with his audience, and he's not liking it.
Yeah. He thinks that everyone in that audience is Tom Kelly saying you could do some old Nixon jokes. That's how he feels. He's zeroed in on everyone around him, and he's like,
right.
Yeah, funny kid.
By the way, I want to see what a Chevy Chase improvised weekend update in a hallway would look like.
Oh, if only the crowd would have let it go that far. I'd have a much
if only the crowd knew who he was, just imagine.
I've heard stories about writing with Chevy for Weekend Update, and he sounds like a difficult person with not a great sense of humor anymore.
I'd love to hear. And by the way, Liam, for as much as I said I loved you before the show started, had I known you were this knowledgeable about show business, I would have made a better effort to be a friend of yours, because I'm thoroughly enjoying listening to you. Whereas Christian is living up to the same high standard he's always set. You were much smarter than I thought you were.
You missed your chance. I've got him now. He's here in LA. He's not in New York anymore.
We didn't even get to talk about the Alan Thicke show and their gimmick of having Gilbert Gottfried in the rafters.
I forgot about that. Yeah. I mean, look, by the way, Into the Night with Rick Dees, Thick of the Night. Look, there are many shows. Honestly, I think I was gonna say I think we blew it, but maybe this is the pilot episode for. I'm gonna talk to our friend Carl Hamburger and say like, hey, can we do a standalone? Who are these talk shows? But it's really I want to do failed talk shows. I don't want the successful one.
I'm going to give you a great idea for a show because I'm enjoying this a lot. And I know I wouldn't mind doing a show where we watch all 29 episodes of a Chevy Chase Show and just release it as a limited series and let it stand on its own, like one of them murder podcasts.
Yeah.
It's like a true crime, and the true crime this was network. No, nothing on that.
I don't. Okay. No. I'm not disagreeing because I think I tapped out after I watched this entire episode. I probably recorded it on my VCR, just trying to sound old. And I didn't stay up and watch it. I mean, it was a Monday night. I had school. Let's see, it was 93. So yeah, I was starting my senior year. So yeah, I probably was not up watching this, but I definitely recorded it. I definitely watched it. I don't believe I recorded any more episodes after this because I've looked at a little bit that's available on YouTube. And I should give credit at some point to the channel I took this from.
I were allowed to be the guest to bring us back on track, I want to just point out, just from the clip you just showed me, everything you and Liam just said was you could just see this is a man who's irritated by his fans, one. Yes. But two, if I am the man defending the network executives who got him a show, they're all coming in. And again, as a guy who's worked on a number of daytime projects and a few late night projects, Liam sort of said this before. Late night shows seem to have contempt for high energy, and news shows like, oh, we don't need the crowd. And what I have always been good at is Tom Kelly's gift in daytime is bringing in a crowd and getting them to an energy level so high, it's frankly, people look down on me and think it's hacky. But high energy covers up mediocre shows. And the other thing I want to point out is that when a show starts, there's two ways to look at it. It's like, hey, this is a big shot. Look, we have big guy who, we have a big shot. And then when that starts to fail, they eventually go, and we're just like you instead. Yeah. So like this is a classic first show mistake. Look at what a big shot I am. They renamed a building after me. And it's important to point out that, again, why Letterman worked and Chevy Chase didn't. Letterman was offered a chance to rename the Ed Sullivan Theater to David Letterman Theater, and he said, no, I can't do that. That would just be cocky. That's a true story. What you see here is the point where you need enough hubris to put yourself on television, but too much hubris destroys the show. And that is what you're seeing here in Chevy Chase's. Look, we're all going to enjoy this clip of him shooting champagne out of a water balloon. When in reality, it's who the hell knows if there was really champagne in there? It's just bad daytime hack.
I think anyone who's ever worked on television knows that there was not champagne in there. There was just water. But go ahead, Liam.
Tom, speaking to your point, a lot of people look down on Leno on his show, but Leno was really, really good at walking that line. Where he was, his whole bit was, I'm just a working guy like you guys. It's just my job happens to pay a little bit more than yours does. But I clock in at 9, I clock out at 5, my staff doesn't work late. And when the audience gives me a standing ovation, I go in for the high five with everyone because I'm not better than the audience.
Yeah. Well, and the class, and apparently that was one of the things that made Leno start rating high was Leno was willing to touch his audience in appropriate places, and look at, and frankly, that's a gimmick to Liam's point. Listen, we make fun of Leno, we knock Leno, but that's still something that's done today. When I sub in to do warm up at Colbert, I practice the high fives. I practiced them going in.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that fundamentally it came down to the fact that Leno came off more likable. I mean, I was trying to explain all of this to my wife recently, who I'll brag for a moment is a number of years younger than I am. So she didn't know that Chevy Chase ever had a talk show. Her and her family never watched Letterman. They would watch Leno sometimes. And there's something to be said for the guy who comes off nice and he has the dancing Itos come out and he does Iron J or Biondo so it was like little, his chin was really big or his head was really big. It was like the two effects. And, I honestly, I think Conan was the perfect follow-up to that. But I always preferred Letterman, but I do think people are very quick to discount what Jay did for, decades. But fundamentally, it does come down to how likable is your host? How likable do they come off? But also, you do have to have the material that works. And we just watched a stiff, stodgy building dedication pre-recorded bit. So what does Chevy and his staff decide to do? One, there's an earnest, heartfelt moment about him getting the key to the city and why it meant a lot to him. But they then follow that up with another pre-recorded bit of him going outside, doing a very specific dedication that people who've been to Hollywood certainly know about, the handprints in the cement and the footprints in the cement outside of the Man's Chinese Theater. So I've advanced fairly far into this because there's a lot of like having him walk through the audience and walking outside, and we see
Right
him
over this way, Chevy.
and Johnny Grant is back.
Great.
Okay,
I'm laughing
Chevy's walking
already.
over. All those people work on the show. You can tell.
See,
Actually, I think
I'm
that's
not
Eddie
going
Feldman right there.
Great. All
I'm
right,
not going to
Chevy.
hate
Just
this
kneel
stuff,
down right
where I can see
in the
why they made this
end,
mistake.
and press your hands into the cement. Okay.
I don't know what could possibly happen
Right,
here. He's,
later.
he's bending down at
do.
wet cement,
All right.
and we all
It's
know
warm.
Chevy.
Ready?
He's going to put his hands in the cement. Oh my goodness, he falls right into the water.
I told you that's funny. I like this.
I think as Chevy is standing there with the audience, he's thinking like, I wish I'd never gotten out of that. I wish I'd stayed
Is I in
there.
the wrong place or what? I don't think I can put my feet in it. It seems too thin to me. You should let it sit more. Yeah. I agree
I'm
with
going
you.
to argue
It's a little
in
too deep,
1993. This is funny.
It is too deep. It's the first time this has ever happened. Yeah. Well, Johnny.
Who's worse at improvising, Chevy Chase or Johnny Grant? The verdict is out. Send us a message on X at Bladtcast, BLADTCAST, or leave it in the comments below. I get it. Chevy's thing was always falling down and seems to have directly related to, some fun with painkillers, I guess. But allegedly,
I don't think it's allegedly. He talks about it.
Okay, good. I'm so worried about this litigious. It's easy for Liam to just spout off his fast and loose opinions.
I think that bit works if they do it at the Man's Chinese Theater.
Yes.
I think part of the problem is they're just doing it on the sidewalk outside the studio, where it's like, who does that? But I feel like if they had set it up at Man's, that would have been a very funny bit.
Yes, I'm going to assume that they tried to do it in front of the Chinese Theater, and
Of course.
they were told no. So they're like, all right, it'll be just as good. I'm sorry. I'm really excited that I saw somebody that I recognized in that clip.
Listen, you can't let go of a gold bit like that. You just make it work somehow.
But Tom, did that work on any level for you?
Well, I thought I'm going to say it worked. It was 1993 funny. It doesn't hold up in the age of TikTok. You got to remember. Here's what I remember about watching classic television. Again, in 1993. Again, am I right about this? Listen, show got canceled. I could be wrong. I'm obviously, anytime I defend Chevy Chase, I'm wrong here because the show lasted 29 episodes. But
sure did.
You know what, man? It was the setup was too long. What I saw there was a mistake that I used to make in the way I used to mock late night TV on my hit local cable access show in college, which is, it's funny. You know what I miss about 1970s and 1980s TV shows, which you don't see anymore, are establishing shots. Like, it sounds stupid, but look, he's walking down the hallway. You've never seen this before. At a certain point, you have, and we're over it. in the year 2023, not funny. I'm over it 30 years later. But in 1993, ooh, it's exciting. Look, that's a TV studio.
So
He's walking outside, and then ha ha ha, he fell into the concrete.
to,
I would,
to,
you know.
to your point about it being 1993 funny, I just want to follow up. Have you ever seen, I don't know, something like the Jack Benny program or You Bet Your Life with Groucho Marx, or I'll even go a little bit more contemporary, Monty Python's Flying Circus? People were capable of being funny by 1993. And it just neither one of those bits worked. And it's just like, we're like, let me just see, because they haven't gone to commercial yet. We're only 9 minutes into the show, and we are going to jump around a little bit.
You know, it's funny. I have to go soon. I don't know if we can break this into a two-parter.
No, Liam's going to have to go in a little bit too. I have a couple of things that I want to get to, and Tom, you can message me how many minutes you have, but I know Liam has a heart out in a little bit longer.
I got 30, so.
Yeah, no, I know, and I've got a big media appearance in a little bit, so yeah, we'll do just a few more minutes, because Tom, I think it's very important you stick around for a bit that Liam and I were speaking about in the waiting room before you came out, and we did show this on Who Are These Broadcasters. I want you to take special note of how Chevy sets up the clip, how comfortable he seems, and then also what happens next. I think we might have done. Yeah. Ooh. So he's commenting on all the
they're gonna really have to thicken that stuff up, because I had to shower within a minute and a half. You know, I love music. I love to sing. And I love to make a fool of myself. Watch the monitors. Roll it, Steve.
I was blue and I was always wearing a brown, because my gal had turned me down. Then we met and you bet I knew from the first you were my love, just that's when the old gray blackbird.
So there's two mind faces, and now there's a third one. All three of them Chevy Chase. And the one with the sunglasses on is the one that the other two seem to not like. Just describing it for our audio audience. They're all really annoyed by Chevy. So it just reinforces the point we've been making that Chevy is so annoyed by other people, he even hates other iterations of himself. And I have read extensively about this show, and I guess that he's going for an Ernie Kovacs show vibe, which, was an early television show pioneer in sort of like bits and playing with split screens and stuff. But I mean, I won't pretend that I've seen reruns of the Ernie Kovacs show and thought they were funny. They did used to show them on Comedy Central. Yeah. So it's a long drawn out bit. I mean, it just keeps going, and this is 10 minutes of content, and we're already like probably 15 minutes of airtime, because we don't have commercials in this version. And Tom, what are your thoughts when you see three white-faced Chevy Chases all singing together and being mildly annoyed by one another?
I have to tell you something. Thank you for explaining that, because I did a deep Google of that bit today, because I did not understand it, and I didn't understand how it fit into the Chevy Chase show at all.
Yeah.
And I'm going to I'm going to go with Liam here and just be careful about, I'm enjoying us talking to each other. I'm not sure if I'm enjoying the clips of the show, or it sounds crazy. I think we're doing but I don't mean it in a mean way, like I'm making fun of us. But yeah, I think that's just something I can justify the water balloon. Yeah. And I don't mean like I can justify the hands in the cement. And now this is where I go, all right, I can't defend that one. I don't know what the was.
And here's the thing, Tom, we've talked a lot about production that goes into a number of shows, and think about the time. Chevy had to get slightly different makeup for each of those faces. You do have to split the screens and you have to sync it up so that they all sing along. I can't imagine how many takes that took. What I will tell you is that a lot of time and effort must have gone into that bit, because they played it again 2 nights later on episode 3 of the Chevy Chase Show in its entirety, by the way. And we did not show the entirety. I just, we talked over.
Yeah,
it
and listen, you see that with all these shows once the host gets big. And I think one thing I can just tell from a gut instinct as a man who's been around daytime TV, let me tell you, kid, you gotta respect the host's time. And what happened there was his time was already a commodity. Like that, what I see in Chevy is like season 20 energy, not season 1, I'm happy to be here energy for a new host. And that was a bad bit. I can't defend it. I did not laugh. Like, listen, I love bad comedy. It's why I admire the stylings of Liam McEnaney here. For real.
Wow, shots fired.
No, but not even shots fired. But I mean what I said before the show is you're a comic's comic. Sometimes you would tell a joke that would be dry and I'd be laughing my ass off. And then you'd have this like, you would fight the audience sometimes. I remember you were a great comic. And what I am, and I would, if I were seeing Liam performing, I'd be like, listen, no, Liam's great because this, and this. I am not seeing that in what I just saw here. There's no tangible goodness. In fact, I'm going to argue the waste of white paint in that bit right there. Like there was nothing discernibly good about it. And I didn't mean that as a shot, Liam. I meant that as a why I love you is when I use the phrase comics comic.
Yeah. Tom is clearly rethinking what he said, but I felt like I knew what you meant. And I feel like you don't need to backpedal from it. And
bad comic. I get it. It's fine.
Yeah. He gets it. So I think you guys are right. But I want you to finish your thought, Liam. Go ahead.
I just want to say I was watching this bit and I was thinking about how there was a time when Chevy Chase was the hippest guy in the room. I mean, like, it's easy to forget Saturday Night Live, the hippest show. And then his early movies with Goldie Hawn were like, he was the original drummer for what became Steely Dan. I mean, like this guy, he was a National Lampoon guy before he was ever on TV. I mean, this guy had his thumb on what was edgy and interesting and different. And now he's doing this like bad sub, Ernie Kovacs bit where he's miming and singing lead to an old comedy record. It's just kind of sad.
Yeah. And I think that's the up note we should leave it on, because I do agree with both of you that it's so much fun to take this time to go through the Chevy Chase Show. I wanted to make sure.
Can I beg you to do this as a 2-parter, and then maybe Chevy Chase will do a 3rd part, making fun of us, making fun of him.
I'm trying to say that I want to put a pin in it now for this episode, because I wanted to get us to the point before the guests have even come out. So in our next episode, Chevy is going to welcome 2 Oscar winners, one of whom I know Tom Kelly is very fond of. And honestly, I don't have anything bad to say about anything that Whoopi Goldberg has to say or do in this episode, except for the gift she gives him. So that's our tease. That's
she tells she tells a story that is not a late night talk show story.
Yeah. So I think
both guests are like, "Fuck this show." It's very interesting to watch.
I mean, we need so much time for Goldie Hawn that this might actually be a 3-parter, because there is a celebrity cameo as part of the Goldie Hawn segment, which I know, Liam, you've watched it, so you know who I'm talking about. Just you didn't know he was a celebrity at the time. So there's so much more to come as we break down only episode 1 of the Chevy Chase Show. Tom, I love your idea for doing a whole limited series on this. I think 26 episodes isn't enough. I think we need at least 52.
Right.
We could get a year of weekly episodes. I do think some of these are not available, though. As we put a pin in Chevy for right now, and I will give a shout out to VHS Archives on YouTube. That is the source for where I found these and some other episodes of the Chevy Chase Show. I tried to download the clips myself and present them, but I was less than successful. So as we bid adieu for now. Tom, let people know where they can find you and your wares, as it were.
The TomKellyShow.com, my friend. The gateway to my own podcast, my social media, and all things in the Tom Kelly empire. This was a delight, guys. Thank you, guys.
And
Absolutely. Go ahead, Liam. Where can people find you?
well, first, I'd like to say that when Tom and I had met, I'd already been a professional comedy writer and had been on TV a few times. So I wasn't just.
Did you big time Tom Kelly?
I didn't.
Oh,
but I really
and-
I just wanted to point out, all jokes aside, I actually did do well in front of audiences at one point in my career.
And let's own this. You had my genuine respect is not heard. You had a premium blend. You were when I say comic,
Right.
you were great. And then
Right.
there were moments where you would intentionally fight them, and I loved it. And you were
Right.
great, my friend. I don't
No,
want to.
I fucked around too much on stage, but I just wanted to make
around
that
is the
point.
word.
I just wanted to make that point that
Yeah.
that I am a professional. I just
And let me also argue just for a second. 2001 Liam is also, quite frankly, more accomplished than 2023 Tom Kelly. I'm jealous of his resume.
well, I didn't want to say that, but 'cause
Yeah,
that's not
that's
true.
what he's
but
saying.
But I'm saying all that to say I got nothing to plug. You can find me on the
but 2001 Liam had never had lunch with Jackie the Joke Man Martling, so obviously. By the way, I'm not knocking it. I wish I had lunch with Jackie.
That's a great story, and Jackie's a very interesting guy. But I will say you can find me on the Bladtcast talking about the Chevy Chase Show.
Yes. As soon as we're done, I know Tom has to leave, but we're going to figure out how to schedule it, and people will get that. Not this time, but oh wait, I got to give all my plugs. Don't forget to tune in to Who Are These Broadcasts? No. Don't forget to tune into Who Are These Broadcasters every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific on the Who Are These Podcast Network, where you will see us go through clips very much like this, except when Carl hits play, they actually play the video and the sound at the same time. I've still got my training wheels on, but that's all right. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Christian DMZ. Of course, Twitter is called X now, so you can find all those things there. And I appreciate everyone who is watching, and please tune in for our next episode. That will not be this time on the Bladtcast. That'll be next time on the Bladtcast.